Ahead and get started. It looks like our numbers have slowed down. Welcome to the Virtual and Hybrid Program Accelerator informational webinar. We'll jump into our agenda. For today, we're going to introduce our team to share with you who is going to be supporting folks who participate in the Virtual Hybrid Program Accelerator. We're going to do a quick overview of SB15. I'm sure many of you may have already participated in some of our previous webinars, but we just wanted to touch on some of the key criteria of SB15. We'll give you an overview of the Virtual Hybrid Program Accelerator, the timeline of support, and the application process, along with questions and answers. So before we get started today, we want to jump into some introductions, and we want to hear from you all. So in the chat, please enter your name, your LEA, and then type the number down here from 1 to 4 of what best describes where your LEA organization is in the virtual program or journey. I see someone has put a 10. We've got a whole new category. I'd love to know exactly where you guys in your district is at. Got folks from all over: Spring ISD, A-Leaf, School of Science and Technology. We also sent an email this morning, a big push this morning. So for those of you who got the email this morning and have joined us, thank you so much for joining us on such short notice. We appreciate you being here today.
And I love seeing the variation here too, Nicole. It's fun to see. You know, we've got folks really in a lot of different phases. Folks who are in the initial phases of planning, folks that are just at the cusp, ready to launch a program soon, and then we've got folks who are already running, which is just a great variety. And you're in the right place because the program is certainly designed to be supportive of folks kind of wherever you are in the journey of design or implementation.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much, everybody, for sharing where you're from. Looking forward to further connecting later on throughout today. So next, we're going to introduce our team. My name is Nicole Aguirre. I am the Director of Virtual Education and Innovation here at the agency. I will be the director who's overseeing the Virtual and Hybrid Program Accelerator. I have, prior to joining the agency, I started out as a classroom teacher. I was an early childhood teacher. I then went into technology design and really looking at how we can transform the way that students are learning in classrooms. Was the director of early childhood and then spent a little bit of time working within human capital. And so here at the agency, I'm really excited to dive back into one of my passions around technology and innovating. And I oversee, a lot of the work around remote learning and remote conferencing, some information that's gone out about that. I also have worked a lot around the communications around SB15 and helping folks understand what all that bill entails. And then also getting ready, really excited to support the Texas Commission on Virtual Education. So I'm excited to get to know more of you and hear more about the work that you're doing in your districts today, as well as share with you this really awesome opportunity to support LEAs in launching a virtual or a hybrid program. And with that, I will pass it over to Megha.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megha Consrat. I'm the Director of System Support and Innovation at the TEA. It's actually really fun to see some familiar names as well in the chat. I think I might have worked with you on a number of programs that our division supports here at the TEA, including a few programs working on innovative work like the School Action Fund. And I also previously in the last school year co-launched the Resilient Schools Support Program, which initially was really focused on providing virtual learning support. We've since pivoted to providing broader strategic planning support for learning acceleration. But that was really where I think we got to provide a good bit of initial support and training to a number of districts across Texas on remote learning. I'll pass it over to Ann Rajan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ann Rajan, and I'm the District Support Specialist for Virtual Education Innovation. I will be working on the VHPA along with Nicole and the TA providers. A little bit about myself. I started out as a middle school science teacher, and most recently, up until a few months ago, was the Dean of Instruction for Math and Science. I've served as a blended learning coach, and that is really my area of expertise and what I'm passionate about. I'm very enthusiastic about innovative models at the school level. I'm really excited to see how we can increase efficacy of school in virtual and hybrid models across the state of Texas. So super excited to be here.
Thank you, guys.
I'll provide a little bit of framing before we jump in. So many of you, I think, have also been tracking the status of remote and hybrid learning in Texas over the last few months. I think, for many districts, this first revelation won't be particularly new, but I think we have observed that for most students, the best place to learn is in the classroom. And certainly we continue to encourage school systems to support more and more families in returning to learning in the classroom as quickly as possible. That said, we also know that while virtual and hybrid learning environments might not be the right choice for all students, we also know that some families and students have really thrived in these environments and would like to see these options continue. So really the reason for this support and the program that we're offering as part of this conversation. In terms of the evolution of virtual and hybrid learning in Texas, some of you have been tracking this journey, but this program, the Virtual and Hybrid Program Accelerator, was actually initially set to launch really a few months back. So we were planning to launch it as soon as sort of the summer or fall of this school year, with the assumption that House Bill 1468 was actually fairly close to passing in the last legislative session. Ultimately, House Bill 1468, which would have actually funded remote ADA for students, that bill did not pass at the end of the last legislative session. So there was a period of a few months over the summer where we were a little bit trying to really understand and see where the legislature would go with remote learning. Then September 9th, Senate Bill 15 passed. With Senate Bill 15, districts now actually have an opportunity to receive remote ADA for remote instruction that meets the requirements that are outlined in Senate Bill 15. So we have a lot more information on Senate Bill 15. We can certainly drop in some resources as well for folks who are still getting acquainted. We imagine many of you on this call are already well acquainted, especially those of you who are in the number 3 category of the phases of launching this work. But with the passage of Senate Bill 15, there's a bit more of a kind of clear funding path for districts for providing remote and hybrid learning in Texas. With that path now open, we actually were able to go back and say, all right, I think we can still launch our virtual and hybrid program Accelerator. We are just doing it on a later timeline after the passage of Senate Bill 15. So at this point, we have opened up our virtual and hybrid program Accelerator to any districts that meet the eligibility criteria and are either have a virtual or hybrid program now or are planning to launch one in school year 2022-23. So kind of just wanted to recap, especially for those of you who've been following this story with some twists and turns of remote learning policy in Texas, that we are at a point where we are launching this program and we have there is clear authority from the legislature for remote learning.
Awesome, thank you, Mega. So a little bit of framing before we get started. We're going to jump into a brief overview of SB15. And as we talk through some of these parts, feel free to use the Q&A feature to drop any questions that you may have into the chat. We will also later on in our presentation today be going over the remote learning website, and we'll drop that link in the chat for you all. But on that website, a lot of the documents around SB15, our FAQ, our TAA, the to the administrator addressed documents are on that webpage. And a lot of information or detailed information around SB15 can be found there. So SB15 was signed into law on September 9th, which is now means that LEAs may receive full ADA funding for students who attend a local remote learning program that meets the requirements set by SB15. And this is in effect until September 1st, 2023. So we're going to go into what all SB15 allows. As far as the modality for instruction, LEAs may choose to offer synchronous instruction, asynchronous instruction, or a combination of both, either synchronous or asynchronous instruction. It's available for students in grades kindergarten through 12th grade. And for as far as retroactive funding, for all LEAs who met all of the requirements of SB15 in school year 21-22, the school year, retroactive funding prior to the bill passage for remote learning will be delivered. So as long as your LEA is eligible and the students participating in remote learning are eligible, retroactive funding may be accessed for those students. Some additional flexibilities within SB15 is that hybrid learning may be an option for your LEA, which is a mix of on-campus instruction and remote instruction. And then you also have the ability to contract with another LEA for your remote learning program. So in order for an LEA to be eligible, they must meet these key requirements to receive funding under SB15. The LEA itself must have a C or higher performance rating. And then for the program requirements, all the pieces that must be included in your remote learning program is that there must be at least 1 star assessed grade level or a complete high school program, grades 9 through 12. You must provide families an on-campus option. You may not solely offer a local remote learning program. And you must also administer assessments to remote students in the same manner as on-campus students. There's also a teacher requirement, and teachers are required to participate in professional development around virtual instruction, and no concurrent instruction is allowed, meaning that teachers may not teach students face-to-face or remotely at the same time in the same class period. Another criteria of SB15 is that LEAs may only enroll up to 10% of their total enrollment in a local remote learning program. And these pieces down below, who counts towards the 10% cap? It's any student who has enrolled for even a portion of the year in a local remote instruction program under SB15, or any student who received more than 50% of their instructional days via remote learning, including students who are medically fragile, placed in a remote learning setting by an admission review and dismissal committee, students receiving accommodations under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and then students who are served via remote conferencing for more than 20 days. For a student to count towards ADA under SB15, they also must meet specific eligibility requirements. So based on student information from the preceding school year, if a student received remote instruction for a majority of their instructional days in the previous school year, they also must have achieved satisfactory achievement or higher on each STAR assessment administered, had a number of unexcused absences that is 10% or fewer out of all instructional days, and they earned a grade of a C or higher in their foundational curriculum courses taken virtually or remotely in the preceding school year. Foundation courses being reading, math, science, and social studies. If a student did not receive a majority of their instructional time in the preceding school year via remote instruction, then the criteria noted on the previous slide do not apply to determine student eligibility. However, they must meet the following criteria. The student is enrolled in a school district or an open enrollment charter school. The student has reasonable access to in-person services at a district or school facility, and the student has fewer than 10 unexcused absences over a 6-month period. So that was a quick overview of SB15. Want to take some time to answer any questions that may have come through the chat. Feel free to drop any questions around SB15 in the chat, or using the Q&A feature, you can drop a few questions there. And again, all of our resources around SB15 are going to be located on the remote learning webpage. Okay. Checking our Q&A, looks like we don't have any questions. Oh, here we go. How would the criteria apply to a student who is entering kindergarten? So the criteria for the kindergarten student would fall on our second slide. The student is enrolled in a school district or open enrollment charter school. The student has reasonable access to in-person services, and the student had fewer than 10 unexcused absences over a 6-month period. Another question that has come in is, are there any specific requirements on the curriculum that can be utilized? And SB15 does not outline any curriculum criteria expectations. And then can we get a copy of the slides? Yes. So any presentation that we post or host around the Virtual Hybrid Program Accelerator or SB15 previous webinars, all of those recordings are linked on our remote learning webpage, as well as a copy of this slide deck. So after today, we will work to get this presentation and the slides available on and they'll be linked on our webpage, most likely by the end of this week. So for folks on your teams who are unable to attend today, feel free to share the link to our remote learning webpage and we can get them access to these resources later this week. Also, fewer than 10 unexcused absences over a 6-month period. Is that only during the virtual or is that during the beginning of the year? That's during the beginning of the year. So if they have 10 unexcused absences throughout the year, they lose their SB15 eligibility.
And I want to note, because I think it is a little, I realize there's sometimes a little confusion on the absences front. I think in terms of the current school year, in order to be able to claim a student for remote instruction ADA, that student has to have fewer than 10 unexcused absences over a 6-month period.
Correct. All right, so it looks like we've answered most of our questions around SB15. We will have another opportunity for questions and answers at the end of our presentation. So if something comes to mind, feel free to drop it in the Q&A or drop it in the chat and we can get to your question during today's presentation. So now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk more about our program, the Virtual and Hybrid Program Accelerator. And in parentheses, we have VHPA. So throughout the rest of the presentation today, you'll most likely hear us reference the program as the VHPA. Mega gave you all an overview of how we got here and how the program has changed since the spring semester. So we're going to walk you through what the program will look like for support throughout the remainder of the school year and the next school year. So the VHPA is a support for LEAs interested in launching or have already launched a virtual or hybrid program. So even if your district has already launched a program, but you're interested in receiving support and making sure that you're launching a high quality program, this is the program for you. Participating LEAs will receive technical assistance support in the design, implementation, and the improvement of a virtual or hybrid program. And support for this program will last through August 31st of 2023. So you will receive support to launch and then improvement support throughout the 2022-2023 school year and the summer of 2023 to launch your program. For the VHPA, we are anchored in one key goal. We help LEAs launch and iterate on high quality virtual and hybrid schools in which families, students, and staff thrive. Our program is designed to target each of these areas and support the success of all of our parties and stakeholders. So virtual and hybrid models plus VHPA support. The virtual hybrid program accelerator will support either a 100% virtual academy or program, which is a model where your students attend remote learning 100% of the time. We'll also support a hybrid model, which is a program model where the students attend school in person and remotely for different portions of the school week. With the support from the VHPA, you'll receive one-to-one technical assistance to coach your virtual or hybrid program school leaders and directly support staff throughout the program. There will be cohort learning opportunities led by content experts on key topics around virtual and hybrid learning. For example, engaging students virtually, how to best leverage your learning management system. And then there will also be opportunities for field trips so that other LEAs may learn from other LEAs and seeing what they're doing in action. And all of that will be built within our program. All right, see some questions coming through. We will definitely get to those questions before the end of our session. So for the LEA VHPA options, there's a couple of programs that an LEA could decide to choose. They could leverage either offering a virtual program or a hybrid program. And then there's some options that you could consider when applying for the virtual hybrid program accelerator. You can apply either as an individual LEA, meaning that I'm a school district that wants to launch a virtual and hybrid program on our own, and we want to figure out how to do it right in a sustainable manner. Or you can apply under a consortium of either multiple LEAs that are committed to standing up a single virtual program to serve their collective student populations. A consortium of multiple LEAs should apply to this program as a single applicant with a single application. So if you decide to go this route, only one application is needed for the entire group, and you could include within the application that you're applying as a consortium. And here's the interested parties. The consortium option may especially be a fit for our smaller LEAs looking to pool resources into a common virtual school, and for LEAs with a small number of expected remote learners in the coming school year and beyond. A consortium could also function such that one or more LEAs is or are contracting with and sending their remote learners to a virtual program operated by a different LEA. So there's some flexibilities built into the options in which you could operate your virtual or hybrid program for the VHPA. So a little bit more framing around the virtual and hybrid program accelerator, what it is and what it isn't. So the VHPA is technical assistance in design and implementation of a virtual or hybrid program, options approved by the legislator. So it's technical assistance to guide you through the process of launching a virtual or hybrid program, and it's in-kind services. What the VHP is not is a provider of direct grant funds to your LEA. The VHPA is not an authorizer of virtual or hybrid schools. The VHP does not set policies around virtual or hybrid options, and it is not a replacement for following compliance guidelines set forth by the legislature or TEA on virtual or hybrid options. And lastly, the VHPA is not a part of the Texas Virtual School Network. We are a technical assistance support in launching your virtual or hybrid program. So with that, I will pass it over to my colleague, Anne, and she's going to walk you through what exactly the program is going to look like, the cycles for implementation, our timelines of the VHPA support. Anne, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Nicole. So this is our approach to how we want to do the VHPA program. So we are in pursuit of world-class virtual education here. So it is rooted in a continuous improvement cycle. So LEAs will engage in iteration cycles, starting with a design portion and then implement it. And then we will measure to see if the plan and implementation works towards the goals that the LEA has, and then adjust the design based on what we learn. Here is a high-level timeline of what the VHPA support would look like. So starting in December, once you've applied and been accepted, TA provider support will start in December of this year. And then the spring semester will be focused on program design. So some of you, based on what you put in the chat from that 1 through 3 level, you're at different places. So based on what the LEA need is, we'll start with the program design piece. Focus some time towards the end of the spring, beginning of the summer in onboarding stakeholders, whether it's families and students, seeing what the interest is for the program. And then all LEAs have 4 improvement cycles that they can engage in. This is how we've split it apart. One in the fall of 2022. I'm sorry, one in the spring of summer portion of 2022, and then 2 in the fall, and then 1 in the spring of 23. And then if your LEA is choosing to continue this as an option for school year 24-25, and we have legislation that continues, then we will spend a portion of that summer of 23 helping launch that and make any iterations with the plan you have. There's a lot on this slide, is more of a detailed version of what support could look like. So I'm actually going to pause you for a minute and let you look at it, and then I will explain and highlight key parts. Okay, so starting with launching in December, you will have individual kickoffs with your TA partner at the LEA level and at the cohort level. So at the cohort level means whatever LEAs have chosen to apply and be part of it, you will have learning experiences that everyone engages in, or it might be broken out based on who you serve or where you are in the process. So we would have those cohort-wide learning experiences as well. Then we'll dive into, with your TA provider, a diagnostic or readiness check, again, based on where you are in the process, where do you need support? And then design support might look like staffing model creation, how to do culture and PD, identifying those areas, engaging in some professional development on that, coming up with your plans for family and student orientation, goal setting, and then codifying your initial model. Moving into the summer with more professional learning, getting ready to launch the program. I want to highlight one piece right here that is board presentation help. So this really depends on where the LE is at and what your vision is for this program. For those of you who are thinking of making this part of a new school with a new CDCN, which is a campus ID, board approval is needed, and part of the TA support would be to help you create this board presentation. And then some of you would want to just share what is going on and the successes that you've had with the virtual program. And you have the option of getting support for a board presentation at a different portion in the timeline. But this is where we've placed it for right now, based on if people are interested in launching it as a separate campus. Again, I mentioned the improvement cycles. Oh, sorry. So what does this mean? Okay, so for every improvement cycle, you have a set of goals that you're interested in for your virtual program. And those will be rooted in improvement actions that you and your TA provider identify. And then at the end of each improvement cycle, there'll be a collection of metrics that your TA provider will then walk you through and kind of do a review and see, okay, what have we learned? What do we need to improve on? And then they will cater professional learning and new goals for the continuous improvement cycles to follow. Again, as this is happening, you also have those cohort-wide learning opportunities. So we have workshops as a cohort. You also have opportunities for virtual site visits where you can go see what other LEAs are doing, learn from them, share tools, experiences, problem solve together. Really want to make this a community of learners and provide that support in that manner as well. And then, like I mentioned before closing out the VHPA program, there will be a reflection portion And your TA provider will have one last opportunity to provide you any tools, materials to help you be successful if you choose to plan to continue this further in school year 24-25. We ask that all LEAs commit to a few things. So one is that authentic engagement in those improvement cycles. This is an opportunity to partner with a TA provider, and of course, your LEA priorities will be highlighted as well. So we've also outlined some high level what time commitment might look like at the program level. So at the start of the program, there'll be a kickoff meeting, and then your project lead and your TA provider will engage in a weekly to every 2 weeks meeting so that planning is customized for the LEA. And then we ask for the VHPA LEA team. So some other folks who are key players outside of just the project lead would also meet with the TA provider, and then engaging in the improvement reviews, as we mentioned earlier, and then check-ins with us to see how the program is going and what we can change, and also celebrate as we continue the program. LEAs will need to designate a VHPA team. This is what we've broken it down to. There are some required positions on here and then some recommended. Just want to note that some team players may fulfill more than one role. That's completely fine. Just want to highlight a couple pieces here. One is the VHPA program lead. Again, this will be the primary contact for the VHPA program on the TA side and as well as the TA provider. Curriculum and instructional lead, technology lead, and then highly recommend and require a teacher leader group. So these could be 2 to 3 faculty members who are part of the virtual program. They might be your pilot teachers who start doing parts of the program before you want to share it with other people. We like to have a lens for people who are the program leaders. So here we're looking at people who put out professional development or coach your teachers, having them be part of the conversation and attend some of those meetings when it applies to them is part of the vision that we have as well. Lastly, this is a learning experience and a program that we want to make sure we are learning from as well. So we just ask for the LEA to work with us and the TA provider and allow us access to observe and see how the program's going. None of this, the metrics or observations that we do are for accountability purposes. It really is to see and better understand the success and areas of improvement for the program. So we just outlined a couple of things that we might ask for. And lastly, our intention is to create something and a toolbox of resources that can be shared throughout the cohort, but also other schools in Texas who might be interested in this who are not part of the program. So just being transparent about that piece as well. If you are interested in applying and you want to know, okay, what are y'all looking for in this application? We've broken it down into 4 categories: the readiness, commitment, program alignment, and application quality. The readiness piece is getting into how ready is your LEA in terms of launching this virtual program. So what plans do you already have? There are some questions on the application that get to that portion. Are you able to commit people to the VHPA team and outlining those folks? This might be something that we get into those one-on-one interviews to see how ready your LEA is. The program alignment piece is huge here. So evidence of interest from families or students, and how did you get that interest is something that we're behind. So did you put out a survey? Do you already have students who are ready for enrollment, interested, and then what is that number? And then that alignment to, do they qualify under SB15 as well, is something that we look at before to see if this is a strong application or not. And then folks are also solving for individual context, and we would love to hear that. So we have schools, high schools that are looking at hybrid options just to create more flexibility for their seniors or high school students in general. We have schools who are interested in K-8 opportunities because there's a family interest for that. So understanding that and sharing that with us is super important so that we know what the vision for the program is and the long-term goal is as well. Here is the timeline. So the application is live. It is on our remote learning webpage that we have already dropped in the chat. Today is the webinar. Applications are due on the 12th. As applications roll in, we will be setting up some Zoom interviews just to do a little bit more intake and help us understand if we are a good fit for what you're looking for. And then we will announce who is accepted, and your cohort launch with your TA providers, and us will start in December, as I mentioned earlier. Again, all of this is on our webpage. We're just highlighting it here as well.
So now I want to walk you all through the webpage that we have been referencing throughout today's presentation. Let me switch gears and pull up our remote learning webpage. All righty, so are you guys able to see my screen? The remote learning webpage, great. So this is our remote learning webpage, and we can drop the link to this page in the chat for you all. But again, this is where we will house all of our remote learning resources. So on this webpage, if there's any questions that you or your LEA may have around remote learning, remote conferencing, SB15, all of those documents are linked here. We've previously hosted a couple of webinars around SB15. We have some upcoming webinars later this week and throughout the month in December. And as those webinars take place, prior to the webinar, you can use the hyperlinks to register for the webinar. The recordings and slides can be found here. We'll scroll down a little bit further, and this is where you will find all the information around the virtual and hybrid program accelerator. We have links that will link out to the TAA, a link for the application, which is a Word document that you'll download to your device. And then once it's completed, some completed applications will be mailed to VHPA at taa.texas.gov, and we'll give you that email again later on. And then there's a section that you can expand on our webpage that will walk you through the overview of the VHPA. And again, the timeline that Anne just walked you through here can be found on this webpage. All of the key dates around the VHPA. I do also want to point out some more information that can be found on this page. There were a couple questions that came in around, as Anne was presenting, about if your LEA was interested in launching a virtual or hybrid program or school for your LEA, more information around CDCNs. We will be releasing additional information around applying for a CDCN for the upcoming school year. In January, we will be hosting a webinar. So if you're interested in launching a virtual or hybrid school, a separate school, aside from your already established campuses, you may join us on the 18th at a webinar to learn more about what all your LEA will need to do in order to receive a new CDCN for a full-time virtual or hybrid campus under SB15. So like all of that information is found here on the remote learning webpage, and we will drop that link into the chat. And stop sharing my screen. I'm going to jump back over to the presentation, and I'll share time. Okay, and so now we want to take some time to answer any questions that you all may have around the virtual and hybrid program accelerator, what lingering thoughts that you have, what do you think about the program in general? Feel free to drop, thoughts in the chat or questions in the Q&A, and we can get those answered. I will name one question that had come through. One person asked around, who's the technical assistance partner? We are in the final stages of finalizing who our technical assistance partner is. And later this week, I will send you all who have participated today an email with a link to our webinar and a link to the slides. And in that email, once everything is confirmed, I will also include who the technical assistance partner will be so that you guys can have some information around them. And feel free to reach out to us with any questions around the technical assistance piece. But again, we'll have that information later this week. Also in the chat, Mega has dropped some links to the webpage and the SB15 documents as well.
I noticed in the Q&A just some clarifying questions that might be worth voicing over. I think I saw a question about 100% virtual academies and the question about what is allowable given that Senate Bill 15 also requires access to in-person services for students, or reasonable access is actually the statutory language. So just to clarify there, an LEA can provide for students an option to be 100% virtual as long as they still have access to on-campus facilities or services, and that is compliant with Senate Bill 15. What is not compliant, and I believe this is actually the answer Nicole gave in the Q&A as well, what is not compliant is if a given student or family only has a virtual option. So Senate Bill 15 requires that students and families have an on-campus option no matter what. And if that on-campus option is not there for students and families, then the remote education will actually not be fundable because it would not be compliant with Senate Bill 15.
Another question that had come into was around teacher certifications and if they'll remain the same, and that's correct. So whichever students you are including in your virtual or hybrid program, the students that are participating should be supported by teachers who are certified in that area.
Seeing a good clarifying question here, can we apply if we've already started a virtual learning academy this school year? The answer is yes. So you can apply if you've already started an academy and you're looking to improve it. You can also apply if you're actually looking to launch something new in school year 2022 to 23. So the support is actually customizable for either scenario.
And then I think just one other thing that I would name is that the VHPA is supporting technical assistance for LEAs. It's not your traditional grant where districts will receive a large amount of money to organize and run the grant the way that they would typically run a grant. Ours is strictly support in launching, implementing, and iterating on your program.
Seeing a question here, when does the legislation sunset? So the legislation is effective through September 1st, 2023. And beyond that point, it's really up to the legislature to determine forward-moving remote hybrid learning policy.
Another question that has come in is there a process for organizing FSP ADA funding distributions for districts that go through an MOU process? We currently don't have a process for LEAs who choose to partner with another school district. I do, however, think that this is a really good question, and we will definitely take this back as a team to figure out if there's any guidance that we can put out around this. And if any guidance does go out, it will be available on our remote learning webpage, but we have not issued any guidance around developing an MOU with a partner.
And just to piggyback off of that, I think what that means right now is that it's really up to the LEAs who are choosing to partner together and create an MOU to determine, say, the distribution of funding between the two districts who are working together, or more districts in many cases. So that's sort of where we are right now. But yep, to Nicole's point, we can take that back and see if we can come back with a little additional guidance.
Correct. Another question that has come in is, I believe SB15 requires separation of academic accountability. How will this be done without a separate CDCN? So with SB15, there were some additional PEMS codes created for your remote learners. There's a remote synchronous code and then a remote asynchronous code. those are the codes that will be pulled for us to differentiate those academic accountability performance ratings. Another question that came in was, will students be allowed to go from in-person learning to virtual learning and return to in-person learning if parents choose to without any penalties? That's correct. If a family decides that they would like to return their child to in-person learning, they can do so without any penalties.
Seeing a question from Dr. Hinojosa here. Yes, students may remain enrolled at their home campuses and attend essentially a virtual program that does not have its own campus number at the district. So that is possible. And in that scenario, what happens from an accountability standpoint is that the students count toward the performance rating of their that home campus, because that is the campus they're considered enrolled in. And that separate virtual program rating that will also be given, that's also part of the Senate Bill 15 statute, that will also include that particular student. I did see a question earlier that I think might just be worth clarifying again for this group. I think saw a question about whether there's funding from the TEA to pay the VHPA team. So just to clarify, this program, the VHPA program, will fund technical assistance that goes directly to all LEAs who are part of the VHPA. This program does not provide additional grant funding that goes directly to districts for other purposes. So for example, it does not provide funding for helping pay for your personnel who are running the virtual academy or doing some of this work or any other systems you have. So I do want to make that clear. This is really an in-kind technical assistance program. And I'm also seeing a question here about the coding differences for remote conferencing students versus those students who are eligible for remote ADA under Senate Bill 15. I think a key distinction here, and I will actually also drop in a reference doc that might be helpful, which is our to the administrator addressed letter that provides some information on coding. So what you'll notice just a few pages into that particular document, we provide details on PEIMS coding for different modes of instruction. So if you've got a full ADA eligible local remote learning student under SB15, that student is coded under ADA 1 through 6. Whereas if you've got a student who is not in the Texas Virtual School Network, who's remote learning, not eligible for ADA under Senate Bill 15, that student is actually coded under ADA 9. And then if you've got a remote conferencing student, that student is coded ADA 1 through 6. So that might be a little bit helpful for keeping, I think, a few of the coding differences in mind.
I agree. And I know that like the coding pieces get a little bit tricky, but we have in our SB15 guidance, we have a table that differentiates the codes used for remote learning and remote conferencing. So you can see some of the key differences there on the remote learning webpage. And there's another question that we have. If one virtual school is established for the district, how is attendance counted if schools lose students to this VHPA? I think I might be a little confused around like losing students. If your LEA established a a standalone virtual academy, those students would no longer be enrolled at their home campus. They'd be enrolled in your virtual campus, and that's where attendance would be counted for those students. And also keeping in mind that the VHPA, it's not a standalone program for a district, it is a support for the district in launching a hybrid program. So the VHPA supports LEAs in building out a program, but isn't necessarily a standalone program that you would be enrolling students into. And if I misinterpreted your question, please feel free to drop in a little bit more information and I can work to get you a better answer.
And I think I could also use a little bit more clarification. I see a question here from Gabriel. Will there be an exception or waiver for STAR participation rates if parents of these students opt out or fail to bring students to exams? I'm guessing you're specifically thinking about students who are enrolled virtually and parents or students opting out, but it would just be good to get a little bit of clarification in terms of if that's the specific challenge you're seeing. As far as the statute goes, Senate Bill 15 does require that students who are learning remotely are assessed in the same manner as students in person. So that is a core requirement of the bill.
And one thing I'll note after Mega is that if a student does not participate in STAR, then there is not a STAR exam that would allow them to continue to be eligible to participate in a remote learning program under SB 15. So that might be something you would want to communicate with your families who are choosing to opt out, letting them know that they're forfeiting their seat in a remote learning program because that is one of the eligibility criteria for the program. So it looks like we have answered all of our questions. I'm going to hop over to the chat just to be sure. Looks like we've got most of our questions answered. So before we close out, we have I wanted to give you our contact information, but we also have a closing chat that we'd like to give everyone. So for any questions that you have after today, you may email us at vhpa@tea.texas.gov, and Ann and I will work with you to answer all of your questions and provide you with any support that you may need around submitting an application. Another question that had come in regards to our contact information is if you are an LEA who had originally applied for the VHPA and were previously accepted, but you may not have received communication that we had sent out prior to today's webinar, please send us an email and let us know that you are still interested, and we can work to make sure that you are able to continue along in the program and receive support. If the student did not, I'm going to answer one more question. I'm sorry, I just seen a question. Oh, Mega's typing answers. If a student did not take the STAR last year, would the BOY this year count? The students can take I think there's a BOY STAR that they can take that would allow you to determine eligibility for this school year. So as we close out, we definitely want to take a minute to thank you all for joining us to learn more about the virtual hybrid program Accelerator. We are super, super excited to get ready to launch this program, to begin helping LEAs launch solid programs, high quality programs for our students here in the state of Texas. Ann and I are open and available to help you with whatever you need. So feel free to email us and we will get back to you as soon as we can. But before we leave for today, in the chat, we would like for you to take a moment to share with us how your LEA might leverage the support of the virtual and hybrid program Accelerator. What are some things that you're thinking about? What are some ideas that may have been sparked by today's presentation? And what are some considerations that we might need to take into account as program providers? But please take a minute, just drop in the chat how you might leverage our support. collaboration amongst other districts. Absolutely. Field trips are my favorite. Love getting to learn from other folks in the field. Best practices regarding instructional delivery in a remote setting, assistance with the design of a quality virtual program, helping to think differently about how we view schooling to meet the varied needs of students and families. Some really exciting stuff. Knowing that you are not going at it alone. Absolutely. We are here to hold your hand all along the way. Excited to partner and learn with this cohort of districts as we explore innovative opportunities for our students. Some folks are still investigating the journey of, the pandemic, right? Launching things, canceling things, changing things, the flexibility all around that. We're hoping that we can use this program to assist our students that need a more flexible schedule. Yeah, there's lots of really innovative ways that this could be used in LEAs across the state. But again, thank you all so much for dropping in the chat ways that you could leverage this program. We want to thank you for joining us. We really appreciated you taking the time to learn more about the program and also hearing from you ways that you might leverage the program. We look forward to seeing those applications come in. They're due November 12th. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, you know where to find us. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.